Study hard, work hard, succeed. This has always been the recipe for the Asian American dream, and for an immigrant population now accounting for 6% of Americans.
Hello, South Carolina!
So we get pretty educated arrivals in many cases. And then also by the first full US generation, you have this focus on education. The Asian American story is mostly one of concentration in tech, finance, and medicine. And that has been the most sort of successful place to be for the last 20 years or so.
That focus on education as a conduit to a successful career has helped Asian Americans prosper over the decades, with their spending power far outpacing any other demographic in the United States.
Its spending power has increased, we think, about 300% in the last 20 years. But it's also the fact that they have above average incomes. In fact, the wealthiest ethnic or demographic group in the United States are Indian Americans with an average household income of about $115,000. For the country overall, it's 65. So that's double the national average.
As a whole, Asian American households were earning 41% more in income compared to that national average, according to a Nielsen report. And they were also spending more on housing, food, education, clothing, and new cars. That buying power was projected to reach $1.6 trillion by 2024. But then COVID-19 stopped everything short. Despite the high earning and spending power of Asian Americans, their success story was never an even one. This population that numbers at more than 20 million now has always been a diverse one with vast disparities in income, wealth, and education. And the pandemic didn't just lay bare these gaps, it made them much worse. With the U.S. economy disrupted by the pandemic and anti-Asian xenophobia stalling Asian-owned businesses, the more affluent and educated have gotten by, while the poor have struggled.
I think you're going to see the suffering really concentrated in the service sector, where the Asian community is kind of very dependent on clients who are non-Asian to come to restaurants and hair salons and other places. And that tends to be where we see a lot of female, lower income Asian employment. So we can already see in the national statistics, that's where the suffering has been concentrated.
This also means the road to recovery will be an uneven one, but it also presents new opportunities for a population driven by digital connectivity and smart devices, more so than other groups, and whose political voice, amplified by the pandemic, is expected to assert itself in its spending power.
COVID is really a blip in the long-term story of just a sort of a dynamic community that's sort of growing, say, a percent each decade. And, with a $20 trillion economy, you could imagine in 20 or 30 years that Asians are 10% of the US population. That'll be at least 10% of the spending power.
But the question remains what a post-pandemic shift in Asian American spending would look like, and what it would mean for the digital space, for global connectivity, and for closer economic ties with Asia's growing markets. Liling Tan, CGTN, New York.